Once we do that, I think our civilization will last for billions of years.
How do we get back this purest form of empirical science?
This is the future of our civilization. We'll expand in our solar system and eventually go interstellar.
Pete, thank you very much for coming again to support us in our educational program Space Challenges, and thank you for being one of the greatest supporters of the program for a long period of time, which says a lot about you as a character. Your CV is longer than the 25 minutes that we have to discuss. Just to mention a few things for you, for the audience that maybe is not so familiar with you. The longest serving director at NASA Ames, the research center. Before that, general of the Air Force. Before that, quite successful physicist. And in the meantime, helping foster a few of the most stunning companies on the planet Earth. And it's like I mean, you're not that old, but walking legend. Walking legend is a good thing to say. I want just to turn the conversation to what have you been working on for the past few years. What keeps you up at night? And we'll go through all the different exciting programs, because what I really find incredible for you is the strength and and basically the bravery that you have to go after incredibly more challenging projects that people sometimes think even as a naive. You're brave enough to say, no, someone should do it so that we can accelerate faster.
Well, thank you, Rachel. You're too kind. But to me, what gets me up in the morning is a very exciting question, and the question really is about the future of our civilization. And to me, one of the most important things is not just to go into the solar system, but beyond. When I was a little boy, a long time ago in the 1950s, the first two books my mother bought me one was called Stars, and the other was called Planets. And so one was about our solar system, and it had pictures of the planets. And it said there was no evidence of life anywhere other than on Earth. But the second one was about stars, and it talked about, that there are, billions of stars in our own galaxy and billions of galaxies. And that it mentioned that there may be life elsewhere, and that each one of these stars had its own solar system. And I said, wow, that's really exciting. I thought our solar system was boring, but there was no aliens or anything. And at the end of this book about stars, it had pictures of aliens in some planet orbiting another star. So I asked my mother, what are people called that study stars? And she said, they're called astronomers. And so I'm probably one of the rare people that I said, okay, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be an astronomer, and now I am one, and done that for a long time. So to me, the most exciting question is finding Earth 2, finding a planet orbiting a nearby star that either has life or could have life. And that's been really a life quest, and it's been very exciting, and we've made some progress. When I was director of NASA Ames, we had a mission called Kepler, and it was a mission to really look at hundreds of thousands of stars like the sun and see if you see any evidence of a planet. Now, with technology we have today, and I should say until technology we're now developing, you couldn't see planets directly. They were a billion times fainter than the star, and they were very close to the star. To see a planet around a nearby star like the Earth is like seeing a firefly kilometers away if it was flying around a searchlight aimed at you. So it's a very difficult job. So what the first way to do it was indirectly. And the very first method that was used to find planets was if you measured the light of a star. It has spectral lines. These are atoms and molecules absorbing light. If you measure those very accurately, you can see in some cases the star is receding and coming towards you very slightly. That's due to a planet orbiting it. So that was the first, and that was really not discovered until the 1990s. But there were some physicists at NASA Ames that said, if we measure the light very precisely of a star, if a planet goes in front of it, it casts a shadow. It's a very small shadow. It's maybe a 1,000th or 10,000th the light, but you can see those. So we did this mission called Kepler. It was launched in 2009, and it looked at hundreds of thousands of stars. It saw thousands of planets, and it very interesting. We saw enough planets that it suggests every star in our galaxy has a solar system, and that probably at least a quarter of them have a planet the size of the Earth. A lot of them that's in the so-called habitable zone, where it would be like the Earth. So that was an exciting effort. But better than that, we'd really like to see the planet directly, and so that requires a much more sophisticated instrument. And even better than that, we'd like to see what the planet is made of, if it has an atmosphere, if it has evidence of life. So that's the challenge today. And one of the first successes on that was just a few years ago with one of the Breakthrough Initiatives programs called Breakthrough Watch, where we had a very special instrument on the European Southern Observatory's very large telescope. We built that instrument along with the European Southern Observatory, and we had about 100 hours of time. And after looking at the data carefully, we saw evidence of a planet orbiting in the habitable zone of Alpha Centauri A. Now, the nearby star system actually has 3 stars, but the one that's most like the Sun has a planet. Now, it's not a little planet; it's like Saturn, so it's a great big planet. And it was tentative. I mean, it wasn't. It was what's called a 3 sigma result, so probably there. But what's curious about that, and what I kind of liked, was there was a set of movies a few years ago called, the Avatar, and that James Cameron did. They were blockbuster bestsellers. And in those movies, he suggests sometime in the future that there's a giant planet orbiting Alpha Centauri A that has moons, and the moons actually are not only habitable, they're inhabited by aliens. So we told Cameron about this, and he was quite excited. Now, we hadn't proved that, although just this week, some of my scientific colleagues used the James Webb Space Telescope, and they actually saw this planet. So the very nearest star system has something in the habitable zone. Maybe it has moons. So we're very excited about that. I'm involved in some other programs now that are not yet formally decided on, but we'd like to build a space telescope, a big space telescope, bigger than Hubble, that we could actually image not just giant planets, but planets the size of the Earth around nearby stars, and then maybe a later one that you could take a spectrum of. So to me, these are very exciting programs. I think that we're on the verge of finding that there are places. I go to various conferences, and there are students that have a shirt on that says there is no planet B. In my eyes, it's rubbish. There's a lot of planet B's and C's and D's and so on. We just need to find them. And I think this is the future of our civilization. We'll expand in our solar system and eventually go interstellar. Once we do that, I think our civilization will last for billions of years. Now, you don't know what it'll evolve into. When I say civilizations, is it humans, or is it AI entities, or is it we merge with them? That's a very exciting question as well. I can talk a little bit about that one.
Absolutely. Too. I want to dig in even further. This argument, planet A and planet B, is like very limiting, because I also tend to agree with you. We absolutely must find alternative planetary systems, alternative way how to get there safely and fast enough so that it's in human reach of a physiology point of view, or maybe bits of information depending how well we merge with AI at some point. But the people are not out of focus because they don't like the plan B, some of them, because they think if we have plan B, this means that we wrote off plan A, which is not a good deal. So maybe this is like a little bit too narrow focused. People are trying always to get stupid arguments. It's like the argument, do you need medical care and therefore you should not have military forces? In terms of getting as fast as possible, as further as possible, I know that you have been one of the, you and your colleagues and sponsors around you like Yuli Milner and has been for a long time proponents, but also backing up this idea. And you guys are working on it, not only just talking about it, it's about how can we propel a spacecraft faster than ever before so that we can ideally reach a target in a next solar system as fast as possible. If you can share a few thoughts about that, because it is unbelievable project. I got stunned the first time that you showed this small, teeny tiny thing, and you said this is a spacecraft, and it was a mind blowing, and it was. If you can consider, this was almost 10 years ago when we discussed it, and 10 years ago this seemed like a science fiction. Nowadays we have the chip, the technology, and even AI on top of it. So people were most skeptical, even in the science community, were laughing or trying to diminish this effort. From the other side, it was you for 10 years like, no, this will work out, don't worry, you just watch.
Well, Rachel, that's a very interesting question. Is, of course, just finding planet B and planet C is not enough. One needs to go there. And so we started a program to look at that. It was called Breakthrough Starshot. We've completed our first phases of it. So now we're trying to decide what the next phases are. But we did some major studies of, how do you get to the nearby star? Now, if you use a rocket like we understand today, it takes 100,000 years to get there. So probably not going to voyage for 100,000 years. So you need to go faster. You need to go about 1,000 times faster, which is about 20% the speed of light. And that's hard to do. And so the way we looked at that we think can work is that you build a really small spacecraft. It's just a few grams. You attach it to a light sail, which is 5-10 meters across, and you hit it with a very powerful laser, 100 gigawatts or more. That pushes it to 20% the speed of light. Now, it doesn't stop at the other end, so it just goes through. So this looked very promising, but it probably is going to take decades to develop. So, what we're trying to do is look for nearer term capabilities, and one of those is the light sail. And I'm very excited about light sails. The age of sailing ships in the solar system is beginning again. That you can use sunlight. And so we're looking at, both with breakthrough initiatives and with other programs, looking at using light sails in our own solar system to sail around the solar system so you don't have to have fuel. And the way we're very excited about is if you can get close to the sun, you can get a very big acceleration. Not fast enough to get you interstellar, fast, but you can get interstellar in a few millennia, but that's better than a few 100,000 years. But it'll get us to the outer part of the solar system in less than a year. So we're very excited about that technology. It's called a sun diver. The other thing is, of course, I'm very interested in how do you stop at the other end. And so I've been helping some companies that are trying to develop fusion propulsion. This is that there's enough energy in nuclear fusion, if you can harness it, that you could get a very specific impulse of hundreds of thousands, which is hundreds to 1,000 times better than a chemical rocket. And one of the interesting things is when we met James Cameron, which I talked about, he told us that they were postulating a few centuries from now you would go to the nearby star, Alpha Centauri, with a big spaceship. And so we asked him, well, how did you anticipate we're going to do that? He said, with big lasers. And they said, how do you stop at the other end? He said, with fusion propulsion. And so what's interesting to me is both of these technologies are now being developed. So now, are they going to be ready anytime soon? Probably not. But I think we've started some of that analysis. And it's really an opportunity and challenge for the next generation to say, okay, we know how to do it, at least we think. Go ahead and develop it. And so we hope we've kicked off a major effort. And there are efforts around the world to figure out how to get there.
Now, this will inevitably happen. And I think with the accelerated pace of technology that keeps moving faster than ever before, just imagine just a few years ago, nobody took so seriously, or most people, even intelligent ones, didn't put so much emphasis on AI algorithms that are becoming increasingly and faster, smarter than us in specific tasks. Everyone talks about artificial general intelligence at some point, but I think if you just combine even already existing algorithms, that each of them is better than us in certain skills, and you kind of are already there. I mean, we don't know it yet, but we're already kind of there. So I'm curious, how do you see the near-term future through your lenses of experience, combination between first, how do you see AI, and what keeps worrying you and what keeps you excited about it? And second question is, would you somehow see clear vision of combining machine learning and AI into this exploration, small probes that we would ideally send to beyond Earth orbit very soon?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because just this week, I and a colleague, Randy Carell, published a paper, but we had a third author, and the paper was in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society, and the third author was Arthur C. Clarke. And he said, well, he's dead. Well, Arthur C. Clarke, we had the privilege of meeting him in the 1990s and knowing him pretty well. And he really inspired me on a lot of these sort of, expanding our civilization. He wrote a lot of books about it. So we created an avatar, a Arthur Chat GPT. You can go sign on to it. And we've been worked with it to figure out how we terraform Mars. And so we wrote a paper, and it was the journal that he actually had helped start, the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society, and they accepted it. There's three authors, so a resurrected Arthur C. Clarke, myself, and Dr. Randy Carell. In fact, just this week, Forbes magazine wrote a major article about this. But it was actually quite exciting, and Arthur helped us a lot with doing the research and making suggestions. So I sort of feel that one of my idols is coming back, and of course I suppose once we pass on, maybe we'll get resurrected as well by somebody that wants a Pete Worden chat GPT or something even better. But one of the key things that was very exciting about this paper that we talked to Arthur about it, Mars is our first probably major place that will settle, although probably the moon prior to that. But Mars is interesting because it might, in fact, I think it probably has life forms already, and this causes a lot of concern. Like, what do you do with if life is already there? Is it an ethical issue and so on? So one of the things that Arthur helped us explore was, if you look at the history of life on Earth, over 4 billion years ago, life emerged on Earth. Now, whether it came from here or elsewhere is an open question. I think it came from elsewhere. But initially, there was something called the last universal common ancestor. We know what his genome looked like. And very soon after that, it diverged into two areas of single-cell organisms. One was called bacteria. The other we now call archaea. And those, lived for 2 billion years or so on the Earth. And sometime around 2 billion years ago, well, one of them ate the other. And rather than digesting it, it formed a symbiosis. And a new form of life emerged, which are called eukaryotes, which is what we are. And it was probably archaea that engulfed bacteria. It didn't destroy the bacteria, but it formed a symbiosis. So those bacteria became energy producing. They're called organelles, and in our bodies, those are mitochondria, and in plants, they're called chloroplast. And they produce energy. And by providing energy, the cell increased its energy capability by a factor of 1,000. That also powered complexity, which produced the complex genomes we have today. So the fact that we've eventually evolved into very sophisticated life forms and planet-wide species and intelligence was based on this symbiosis. About a year ago, a Japanese research group showed that you could take chloroplast, what plants use for energy, you could plant them in animal cells, and they could survive. Now, the idea is that ultimately maybe you have a cow that didn't have to eat it, just sat in the field and had green skin, and it absorbed light. But this showed that we could actually force a symbiosis. So one of the things that we thought of, and Arthur helped us, was that supposing there's life forms on Mars, it's probably single cell, it's evolved there for billions of years. It's evolved to handle things like Mars has a high percentage in the regolith, the soil, of perchlorates, which is a toxic chemical, but it's also an energy-producing chemical. So could I take Martian cells, if they exist, and plant them in Earth cells and create a symbiosis between Earth and Mars? And the answer seems to be yes. Now, it's going to be a hard job. We've got to find the life first. But to me, the idea is that if we go to some place like Mars, that one doesn't destroy the other, that you form a symbiosis. So that's why we wanted to really put that written. But to me, the most exciting thing was actually, developing an agent that now it's not yet intelligent, but it sure behaves a lot like I remember Arthur C. Clarke. And what we fed it all of the articles and interviews that we could find, and told it about our own experience with Arthur and what his vision was. And so, I mean, it sure. I mean, we haven't done a voice synthesis yet, but it sure looks like the way he would write and what he would do. So, to me, I think the era of people being able to create their own companions and partners to help them do great things is upon us. So I think the future is unlimited. So and we're kind of reminded of course, my favorite movie of all time is 2001: Space Odyssey, which came out just before the Apollo moon landing, and I was a teenager. And in it, one of the key things is in the spaceship is an AI entity. It's HAL 9000. So it's sort of interesting that I think we're getting close that we have a HAL 9000s that we can.
I keep imagining that we deploy the next generation space station, and just when the astronauts arrived, and the HAL 10,000 greets them.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing to worry about here.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just real jokes.
But no, I think that I suspect what that means is that as we expand into the solar system and beyond, that it will be our civilization. It'll be a combination of our biological entities, our intellectual entities, and the AGI that we create. And in some sense, we merge with it.
Yeah, I also tend to believe maybe the future holds much greater prospects, because when people talk about artificial intelligence, for me as a historian, seems to me that it's a little bit confusing, because what we're trying to do is replicate human intelligence and exchange the cellular technology with bits and information. But technically, we're trying to replicate the way that we function, our brain functions. So if we augment our brain basically, and we call it artificial intelligence or otherwise, of course, if it's more complicated and takes faster decisions, and it's much more profilized than us in anything specific task making, we would not comprehend the reasoning behind exactly, but this doesn't make it less human-driven design. And for good or for bad, it will have good and bad characteristics of human intelligence. But I'm very bullish that I also see the future of complete symbiosis between digital and biological life forms. I also am super excited. I don't know what to think about synthetic biology. So basically the idea of creating artificially, meaning in the lab, either accelerating evolution on a cellular basis or creating a brand new type of cellular structures capable of surviving and thriving in environments where our human bodies apparently cannot thrive today.
Well, that's a very interesting question. In fact, something I'm working on. I figured that, I've assisted a number of other companies do startups. In fact, I remember when I first met you like 15 years ago, that's what talking about a startup, which became EnduroSat. So at the age of 75, I decided to do a startup myself with a colleague.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. It's time to start. But one of the things that we're really very excited about is, I got very excited about synthetic biology and AI and propulsion and so on is how this can be used to expand our civilization. And so we have some programs not funded other than by me right now, but I think we're going to get some funding pretty soon, that can we extract resources using biology? And so we have an initial program to look at extracting lunar resources, and but really very excited about Mars. And fortunately, I met the people who run the German innovation agency, Sprint, and they're very interested. In fact, we had a workshop I organized for them on Mars terraforming using biology. It was in Berlin about 4 or 5 months ago. And I think that, if you go to the moon or Mars, what you really want is a programmable, self-replicating machine, and that's called biology.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mentioned the Mars, there's perchlorates that using tailored biology, maybe it's even Martian biology that's already there, that we can extract the perchlorate and create an environment. For the moon, we're very interested in extracting metals, especially platinum group metals, from the regolith. So it's, I think that the use of biology in space is beginning to be very exciting. And it's one of the areas that I think is going to power this expansion.
Yeah, and yesterday we discussed briefly, and I was really thinking then the whole night about this idea of creating some kind of an extremophile bacteria-like biology that can thrive and using the resources on Mars, and it just replicates fast like a bacteria or a virus to create a completely new environment faster than what we can do technically with 3D printing technology or something else.
Exactly. Biology created our current environment on Earth. Yeah. Now, it took billions of years. We would like to speed that up a bit. Yeah. But biology is very powerful, and we're just beginning to understand the complexity of it. One of the other programs that we started with Breakthrough Initiatives was there's tantalizing evidence that there's life in the clouds of Venus. Now, the clouds of Venus are not a very promising place for life because they're pure sulfuric acid droplets. And you take Earth life and put it in sulfuric acid, it dissolves it.
It kind of doesn't thrive.
However, a few years ago, the Professor James Greaves from the UK and Professor Sarah Seeger from MIT and their colleagues used radio telescopes and others to determine that there's probably the gas phosphine in the upper atmosphere of Venus. Now, phosphine on Earth is always associated with life. Meanwhile, Professor Seeger has shown that initially they thought, well, maybe there's water that's somehow protected, but she and her son actually helped her with this. Showed that you could potentially have life that uses sulfuric acid as a solvent, and there's increasing evidence there's something very interesting going on. There's a privately funded mission that is partly funded by us, by Schmidt Sciences and Rocket Lab, to send a probe there in the next year or two. And there are plans for more probes. I think we're going to find that the upper atmosphere of Venus, which, although it has sulfuric acid, the temperature and pressure is about the same as it is in this room, is permeated with a strange form of life that probably uses sulfuric acid as a solvent. So the range of where life could be is incredible.
And also in the atmosphere of Venus, the atmosphere is similar. Inside these clouds, the atmosphere seems to be normalized, right? It's not the same pressure that you have on the denser surface areas, or not?
No, the surface of Venus is very hot. It's like 500 degrees centigrade, and it's 90 bars, 90 times. Yeah. But at this layer, it's about 20 degrees centigrade, and it's 1 bar. It's mostly carbon dioxide, a little bit of nitrogen, and these droplets of sulfuric acid float around, but there's other minerals and things. Yeah. So it's sort of a soup, and I suspect we're going to find there's life there, just like there's life under the surface of Venus or Mars.
And hopefully there is also intelligent life on planet Earth, but we don't know yet.
That's right. That's still
we are working on it. Still debatable.
That's debatable.
Right. Going to this topic. I really think that we live in a Disneyland of opportunities for scientists and technologists, and yet there is less and less young people pursuing technology careers and especially science careers. And I think part of it is because of the way that the so-called modern scientific community functions as a very dogmatic community that basically rejects any original thought with a presumptive idea. Oh no, we know it's like a status quo that they keep, and they said this is it what we know, and everything beyond that is just a stupid idea. And I'm really big. I'm optimist that science could be is the coolest thing on the planet Earth to do, or technology to build scientific experiment, as long as you respect the basic common sense scientific principles. I don't understand why bigger universities don't go after teleport systems, beaming stuff to other planets, going interstellar travel using time-space technologies, because even the PhD studies nowadays, for the past many decades, you give PhD study, usually with all respect to a lot of community people that spend life and they keep building interesting projects, but most of the PhD studies are just a repetition of something that we know with a lot of references to what we already know. And you're kind of always an outsider. You have been in this role, I've seen it outside, not an outsider, but you had this incredible career that enabled you to go after these incredibly bold programs, and still, even with your credibility, with your efforts, with the titan efforts, and actually the strength and the bravery to go where someone doesn't go. I saw a lot of our own community being very skeptical all the time and just rejecting the thought of thinking differently. How do we get back this purest form of empirical science, again based on scientific principles, based on common sense, but just to enable people to do crazy experiments? And as long as you don't kill nobody and you're not depriving from you're not completely detrimenting for environment, you should be actually tolerated, and you should be driven, in my opinion, in the university as a safe haven, or in academia, to go this direction. And you should be given a PhD for not making a successful experiment, for having the bravery of, I did the scientific experiment, guess what didn't work out? Because from thousands of those efforts, one would succeed, and then it's a paradigm shift in the science or technology.
Well, I think you're right, Rachel, that there's a lot of stifling attitudes from the experts, but I don't think this is new, and I think it happens everywhere. I think it was Max Planck that said that science proceeded one funeral at a time, and that people need to die off and get new ideas. But it's I've been fired probably a dozen times. Probably still get fired again a few times, and I think that it advances because there are people that are willing to say, I don't care. You have to be willing just to say, no, I'm not going to. Just because you say it's wrong doesn't mean I'm not going to do this. But you have to be willing to suffer, the negative consequences. But this is the same in anything that humans do. I mean, it's
But how do we get more people excited? Because for me, the pity is, I really can foresee how solar cell technology to get us to become an interplanetary and extra solar system species. It's a game changer idea, and common sense dictates that you should see tens of thousands of young people being exceptionally excited and trying out to work in this field. Instead of that, you see them more enchanted in pseudoscience. Why? And false news and narratives, not because they're lesser potent or less intelligent. Totally the opposite. I really believe, I'm optimistic that every generation is better than the last one, and you become old when you're complaining that the new generation is actually worse. I think. But the idea is that how do we get them back? Because they found what science does not give to them, the right to go to different crazy seemingly ideas, but again respecting the scientific methods of research. It just from the get-go being cancelled in some shape or form in academia, and what is left, your mind is still vibrant, still intelligent creature, and you start digging in conspiracy theories, in stupid shit, instead of going to the excitement of building interstellar travel, for example.
Well, this is
how do we change that? Like, what will be what do you think we should do as us, like decision makers, entrepreneurs, investors, whoever have the power to shift a little bit the narrative of society. What we need to do as a common sense to get it?
One of the real problems that we have is that I think that people take science for granted and don't. If you ask people what, you go just do a survey, who's the most admired people on the planet, they're movie stars or sports heroes or at worst politicians and or billionaires. And I think we need to get back to the point is that superstars should be scientists. And one of the things that, the Breakthrough Prize Foundation does is we try to do that. We give prizes to and have a big Hollywood ceremony. It's called the Oscars of Science. That helps. But it also, we have a prize called the Breakthrough Junior Challenge for high school students. And I think we need to do more of this to actually highlight the effort. But the second thing is there's a responsibility of scientists. I think that we bear a lot of that, that we need to reach out to, to me, the most important thing is to find somebody better than you and replace yourself with them, which I've done. I think, the younger generation is all smarter than I am. And this is something that people don't take seriously, that I think and what you're doing with the boot camp, with the space challenges is exactly that, is bring young people in, show them how much fun this is and how rewarding, and it gets them into the program.
Yeah, and one last thing, hopefully some young people watch our useless efforts in making yet another podcast and another videos. What would you tell them if they're early in their careers and they're trying to figure out the way forward? They want to pursue science. What would be your message to them?
Well, the first thing is don't take no for an answer. If somebody tells you this is impossible or can't be done, then you just rubbish. You know more than they do, really, and so you should do that. The second is pick something that, to me, what's important is every day when you get up, say, I can't wait to get at this job. It's exciting. It's fun. There may be challenges, but don't pick something just because, somebody told you should be an astrophysicist. You should pick astrophysics because I really want to find that answer, or AI research or whatever. So I think the two things is don't get discouraged, and second, pick something that's fun.
It's extreme honor to have you here, and thank you again for being one of the greatest supporters of space challenges of our new master degree program. Hope we have many decades ahead of us with digital, semi-digital brains, and hopefully rejuvenated by our own biotech technologies.
Well, thank you.
And keep pushing. You're really seriously inspiring so many people, including myself. And it's not a compliment; it's a fact. So just keep pushing and keep breaking barriers.
Well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you to EnduroSat for having me.